I never thought a single phone call could unravel 12 years of pretending my family was proud of me. But that Wednesday evening, standing in my apartment in Norfolk with my dress blues hanging in the closet behind me, I learned just how quiet erasure can be until someone in a crowded room decides to make it loud. My name is Kira Jeffries. I'm 34 years old, and I've spent the last 12 years as a Navy combat photographer. The person they send into the room when the moment is too important to miss and too dangerous for anyone else to carry a camera. I've documented carrier launches at midnight. I've shot medevac rescues in open water with salt spray blinding the lens. I've captured the faces of sailors reuniting with families they haven't touched in 9 months. And 2 months ago, my younger brother called and asked me to make myself invisible at his wedding. Kira, I need you to not wear your uniform. Jessica's family is traditional. They're not really military people. And honestly, having you show up looking like a recruitment poster is going to make things weird. Just wear a dress. Something normal. Normal. I hung up, sat on the edge of my bed, and looked at the dress blues hanging behind clear plastic. 12 years of service. To deployments. A Navy Commendation Medal. A photograph in the Pentagon's Public Affairs Archive. And my brother wanted me to wear something normal. 2 weeks later, I stood at the back of a reception hall in Savannah in a borrowed Navy dress, holding my father's Canon F1 because my brother had at least asked me to take candid shots, since they couldn't afford a second photographer. And a man I'd never met, 72 years old, silver-haired, standing straighter than anyone in the room, walked up to me, looked at my face for 5 long seconds, and said, Petty Officer Jeffries, USS Bataan, 2018, the Medevac series. Then he set down his champagne glass on the nearest table, stepped back, and saluted me in front of 200 guests, in front of my brother's new in-laws, in front of my mother, who hadn't mentioned my career to anyone at that wedding because she'd been told not to. What none of them knew was that the man saluting me was Rear Admiral Leonard Voss, retired, who had spent 3 years trying to license my photographs for the Navy's official recruitment campaign. The photographs my brother had never once asked to see. Welcome back to Revenge Camera Stories, where the lens sees what people try to hide. And some images take years to develop, but the truth in them never fades. If you've ever been told to make yourself smaller so someone else's table setting looks right, stay with me. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and hit subscribe, because this one develops slowly and the picture comes in sharp. Let me back up 2 months, because the salute came after the silence. It was a Wednesday in early September. I just finished editing a series I'd shot aboard the USS Gerald Ford during Fleet Week, and I was sitting at my kitchen table in Norfolk with my laptop open and a cup of coffee going cold the way it always does when I'm deep in post-production. My phone buzzed. Garrett, my younger brother, 29, recently promoted to associate at a corporate law firm in Savannah, marrying Jessica Whitfield, whose family owned a chain of boutique hotels across Georgia and had the kind of money that came with opinions about everything. Kira, hey, big news. We set the date. November 16th. Jessica found this incredible venue on the river. You're going to love it. Genuine happiness hit me first. That's amazing, Garrett. Congratulations. Thanks. So listen, I wanted to talk to you about something before we send the invites. I should have heard it then. The slight drop in his voice. The throat clear that meant he'd been rehearsing. Okay. Jessica's parents are hosting. They're covering most of the cost. Her dad's pretty particular about how things look. And her mom has this whole vision for the aesthetic. Very classic Southern. Very elegant. Sure, So, about the uniform thing. The coffee had gone completely cold. I didn't touch it. What about it? I just think it would be better if you didn't wear it. To the wedding. Or the rehearsal dinner. Jessica's uncle is kind of anti-military. And her dad's business partner lost a son in Afghanistan. And it's a lot of weight for a wedding, you know? I don't want anyone feeling uncomfortable. I stared at the screen of my laptop. A photograph I'd taken 3 weeks ago. A young sailor seeing her newborn for the first time through a video call. The light catching the tears on her face. Garrett, I've worn my dress blues to every family event for 12 years. I know, and that's fine for our stuff. But this is Jessica's family. They're different. They're refined. And honestly, you showing up in uniform kind of makes it about you. Makes it about me. I'm not trying to make it about me. It's my dress uniform. It's what I wear to formal events. Kira, come on. Just this once. Wear a nice dress. You'll look great. And Mom agrees, by the way. She thinks it's better to keep things simple. Mom agrees. Of course she did. My mother, Diane Jeffries, had spent my entire career describing my job to people as government work, not Navy, not combat photographer, not the woman whose images were used in the Secretary of Defense's annual briefing. Government work. Mom told Jessica's parents I work in federal communications. I said flatly. A pause. She was trying to keep things smooth. She was lying about what I do. Kira, don't make this a thing. It's one day. Just blend in. Take some photos. Be supportive. Be supportive. Blend in. Make myself small enough that Jessica's family wouldn't have to think about where their tax dollars go. Fine, I said. Thank you, seriously. You're the best. He hung up 30 seconds later. Didn't ask about the Fleet Week series. Didn't ask about my promotion board results, which I'd texted him about 2 weeks earlier and never gotten a response. I sat there looking at the photograph on my screen, the sailor and her baby, and I thought about my father. Tim Jeffries had been a photojournalist for the Virginian pilot. He'd covered military life in Norfolk for 20 years, not as a service member, but as a man who believed the people who served deserved to be seen. He died when I was 22, 3 months after I enlisted, and he left me to things. His Canon F1 and a note that said, "See clearly. Shoot honestly. Never let anyone crop you out of your own story." I'd carried that camera in my bag for 12 years. Into every briefing room, every homecoming, every deployment. It was the one constant. And now my brother wanted me to pack it in a borrowed dress and pretend the last 12 years were government work. I flew into Savannah the Friday before the wedding. Checked into a hotel near the venue because Garrett hadn't offered a room at the Whitfield family estate where the rest of the wedding party was staying. I wasn't in the wedding party. 6 bridesmaids, all Jessica's sorority friends. For groomsmen, all Garrett's law school buddies. His only sister, the one who'd served 12 years, was just a guest with a camera. I ironed the navy dress I'd bought at a Nordstrom in Norfolk the week before. Simple, elegant, forgettable, exactly what they wanted. The rehearsal dinner was Friday night at a restaurant on River Street. I arrived alone, camera bag over one shoulder, and found my seat at a table near the back with a distant cousin and 2 of Jessica's college friends I'd never met. The front tables were for the Whitfields. Jessica's parents, Thomas and Catherine, presided over the evening like it was a shareholders meeting. Thomas Whitfield had the kind of handshake that came with a net worth disclosure. Catherine wore pearls and smiled at everyone the way you smile at staff. My mother sat at the family table looking polished and pleased. She'd had her hair done. New dress. The version of herself she wore when she wanted people to think we came from more than we did. I watched Garrett work the room. He was good at it. Charming, confident, the golden boyhood. Gone from public university to law school on scholarships and determination. He'd built something real, and I was proud of him. But every time someone asked about his family, I noticed the choreography. And your parents? My mom's here, retired teacher. Dad passed when I was 17. Any siblings? Just my sister, Kira. She works in federal communications. Federal communications. I was sitting 12 feet away, holding a camera I'd carried into combat zones. And my brother was introducing me as someone who sends emails for the government. Nobody came to my table to ask me about myself. I didn't expect them to. The one person who noticed me was Jessica's grandmother, Eleanor, 81, who walked slowly past my table on the way to the restroom and paused. You have lovely posture, dear. Were you a dancer? I almost laughed. No, ma'am, military. Her eyebrows lifted. Oh, how wonderful. What branch? Navy, ma'am. 12 years. My late husband was Navy, served in Korea. What do you do? I'm a combat photographer. She looked at me for a long moment, really looked. The way photographers look at a subject before deciding to press the shutter. And nobody here knows that, do they? I didn't answer. I just smiled. She patted my hand. Some people are afraid of the light. Dear, don't let them dim yours. Then she walked away, and I sat there holding my father's camera under the table, feeling the familiar weight of it against my knee, and wondering if my family had always been this afraid of who I was, or if Jessica's money had simply given them permission to finally say it out loud. Saturday, the Whitfield River Estate. 12 acres of manicured lawn, white tents. A string quartet playing under oak trees draped with Spanish moss. The ceremony was at 4. I arrived at 3:30. Navy dress, low heels, camera bag over my shoulder. The venue coordinator gave me a curious look. Are you the backup photographer? I'm the groom's sister. She blinked. Checked her clipboard. Oh, I don't have you listed with the family. That's correct. She showed me to a seat in the 5th row. Not the 1st. Not even the 3rd. The 5th row. Behind Jessica's college roommates and Thomas Whitfield's golf friends. I sat down, placed my father's camera on my lap, and watched the venue fill. The ceremony was beautiful. I'll give them that. Jessica looked stunning. Garrett looked happy. My mother cried during the vows and held Catherine Whitfield's hand like they'd been friends 4 years. I took photographs from my seat. Not the staged kind. The real ones. The flower girl picking her nose during the prayer. The best man checking his phone. The way Garrett's hand shook slightly when he put the ring on Jessica's finger. The moments nobody else was watching, because nobody else was trained to see them. The reception started at 6. String lights. Open bar. A 12-piece band that probably cost more than my annual housing allowance. Garrett found me near the cocktail station. Kira, hey. Thanks for coming. You look great. Thanks. Listen, Jessica's dad wants some candid shots of the reception. Can you float around and capture some moments? I know it's a lot to ask, but the photographer is mostly doing posed stuff, and we could really use someone with your eye. My eye, not my rank. Not my service. Not my name. My eye. Sure, I said. I'll get some good stuff. He squeezed my shoulder and disappeared into a crowd of people who all seemed to know each other's net worth. I moved through the reception the way I move through any assignment, invisible, observant, present but unseen. I captured the grandmother dancing with the flower girl, the father of the bride whispering something in Jessica's ear, to groomsmen sneaking cigars behind the tent. Nobody noticed me. That's the gift of a good photographer. You see everything, and no one sees you. I was framing a shot of the head. table when someone stepped into my peripheral vision and didn't move. I lowered the camera and turned. A man late 60s, early 70s, silver-haired, standing, with the kind of posture that doesn't come from yoga classes. It comes from decades of formations. He wore a tailored charcoal suit, no military insignia. But everything about him said officer. Retired, but never really off duty. He was looking at my face. Not at the camera. At me. 5 seconds. Maybe 6. Then he spoke. Petty Officer Jeffries. My breath stopped. USS Bataan. 2018. The Medevac series. The photograph of Corman Williams carrying the child through the flight deck hatch. I lowered the camera all the way. Yes, sir. That image was in the report I presented to the Joint Chiefs. It was the reason they approved the expanded medical response funding. Do you know that? No, sir. I didn't know that. He extended his hand. Leonard Voss, Rear Admiral, retired. I've been trying to find you for 3 years. I shook his hand. My grip was steady. My voice was not. Find me. Your photographs from the Bataan deployment. We want to license them for the Navy's official recruitment campaign, the new one launching next spring. Your work is the centerpiece we've been building toward. But your command said you transitioned. And your contact information went through 3 different offices. I'd given up finding you until about 30 seconds ago. I stared at him. You recognized me from the photographs. I recognized you because your self-portrait is in the Pentagon's Public Affairs Archive. You're standing on the flight deck with salt spray on your lens and a camera in each hand. It's the most honest image of a service member I've ever seen. The band had started a slow song. People were moving toward the dance floor. Nobody was watching us. Nobody except my mother, who had glanced over from the family table and was now staring with an expression I couldn't read from across the room. Admiral Voss set his champagne glass on the nearest table. "May I?" he said. And then, without waiting for the room to notice, he stepped back, straightened his spine, and saluted. A full, formal salute. The kind that carries 50 years of service in the angle of the hand. In the middle of my brother's wedding reception. The couple nearest to us stopped dancing. Then the people behind them. Then the people at the closest tables. The ripple of silence moved outward like a stone dropped in still water. I returned the salute instinct training, the thing you do when someone honors you and you honor them back. When I dropped my hand, the room was watching. Admiral Voss turned to the nearest cluster of guests, Jessica's parents among them, and said in a voice that carried the way a command carries across a deck, "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the interruption, but I've just found someone I've been looking for. This woman is Petty Officer First Class Kira Jeffries, United States Navy. She's a combat photographer whose work has been published internationally, briefed to the Joint Chiefs, and is currently being considered for the Navy's national recruitment campaign. And she happens to be the groom's sister." He let that sit. The groom's sister. Thomas Whitfield set down his scotch. Catherine's pearls caught the light as she turned. Jessica looked at Garrett. Garrett looked at the floor. My mother's hand found the edge of the table. And I watched her grip it the way you grip something when the ground shifts under you. "She's not in federal communications," Admiral Voss added almost gently. "She's one of the finest military photographers the Navy has produced in 20 years. And I suspect some of you didn't know that." The silence was complete. Then Eleanor, the grandmother, stood up from her chair at the family table, lifted her glass, and said in a voice that shook but didn't waver, "To Kira, my husband would have been proud to know you." Glasses went up. Not all of them, but enough. What followed wasn't dramatic in the way you might expect. There was no screaming, no scene, The band started playing again. People went back to their tables and their conversations. But the room had shifted. Thomas Whitfield found me 20 minutes later near the bar. He stood next to me for a moment without speaking, which told me he was a man who chose his words. My business partner, James, lost his son in Kandahar in 2011, he said. That's why I asked Garrett to keep the military stuff quiet. I didn't want James to have a hard night. I understand, sir. I didn't know what you did. Garrett told us you worked in communications. He didn't mention any of this. No, sir. He wouldn't have. Thomas looked at me. Really looked. That was wrong. And I'm sorry I was part of it. I nodded, didn't say more. Sometimes the truest response is the one that lets someone sit with their own weight. He walked away, and I noticed him stop at James's table. I couldn't hear what he said, but James looked over at me. And the expression on his face wasn't discomfort. It was recognition. The kind that comes from someone who understands exactly what service costs. He raised his glass, barely, just enough. I raised mine back. Garrett found me outside an hour later. I was sitting on a bench overlooking the river, my father's camera in my lap, listening to the muffled music from inside. He sat down next to me. Didn't speak for a long time. I messed up, he said finally. Yeah, I didn't know he was going to be here. Jessica's grandmother invited him. He's an old friend of her late husband's. That's not the point, Garrett. I know. You told 200 people I work in federal communications. Mom started it. I just didn't correct it. That's worse. He looked at his hands. I was embarrassed. I turned to him. Of what? Of the gap. You've been all over the world. You've been published. You've been in the Pentagon. I've been grinding. At a law firm trying to impress. People who measure success in billable hours. And when Jessica's family asks about my sister, and I say combat photographer, they get this look. And I just didn't want to deal with it. So you erased me. I didn't erase you. You cropped me out of the frame, Garrett. Dad would have called that a sin. He flinched. Our fathers go standing between us on a bench in Savannah. I'm sorry, Kira, really. I know. What do you need from me? I looked at the river. The light on the water. The kind of light my father would have shot. I need you to tell people who I am. Not once. Not tonight, consistently. I need you to stop letting Mom call it government work. I need you to ask to see my photographs. And I need you to understand that hiding what I do didn't protect anyone. It just made me smaller so you could feel bigger. He was quiet for a long time. Then he nodded. Okay. We sat there watching the water until Jessica came looking for him and the dancing started again inside. That was 2 months ago. Here's what happened since. Admiral Voss followed up. His office contacted my command, and the licensing agreement went through. My photographs from the USS Bataan. Deployment will be the centerpiece of the Navy's spring recruitment campaign. My name, my credit. My face in the behind-the-scenes documentary they're producing alongside it. The phone call I'd been waiting 12 years for came because a stranger at a wedding recognized me while my own family pretended I didn't exist. Garrett told Jessica's family the truth. All of it. Thomas Whitfield hired me to photograph the grand opening of his newest hotel. He paid my full rate without negotiation and introduced me to every person in the room as Garrett's sister, the Navy photographer.